Many moons ago now, back when I was a college kid with a bright future ahead of me, I volunteered as a trail guide at the McCurtain County Wilderness area down in southeast Oklahoma. Having grown up on the ranch my pa worked at, I'd always been an outdoorsy kind of guy. Not a cowboy by any stretch, but I knew which end of the bullets came out of a rifle. And I think I'd have been happy working on that ranch too, if only to stay close to family. But my pa always did want more for me, so when the time came, I decided to make him proud by becoming a lawyer. I studied at Texas A&M, then while I was there, I heard about the volunteer program. It wasn't offering any extra credit, but the university would pay my expenses, so it amounted to a sort of free spring break vacation in my native Oklahoma. The county wilderness area was a real hidden gem, with about 14,000 acres of rugged Ouachita mountain terrain stretching right up to the Arkansas state line. It's got the thick pine forests with cool, clean creeks running through them, and then all kinds of wildlife too, like deer and turkeys and the occasional black bear. It's a prime spot for hiking, fishing, all that kind of stuff. But some folks don't feel entirely comfortable out in the wilderness all alone, and that's where I came in. Now, I led groups on trails like the Beach Creek Loop or up to the overlooks to point out the native plant and bird species, along with a little Choctaw history since their roots are deep around those parts. And for the most part, all my trips out into the wilderness, including my solo ones, went perfectly fine. But then there was this one trip that I made back in the summer of 1995 that I'll never forget, and the reason that I'm writing you. I used to do a bunch of different things as a trail guide, not just guide people, and one of my favorites was what amounted to a sort of campsite scouting. We'd host a lot of overnight camping trips, mostly for younger or older folks, so we needed tried and tested places to take our guests. For example, you needed a piece of flat, solid ground large enough for at least 4 or 5 tents. It couldn't be in a low spot either, where rain could pool up and turn your site into a swamp after one of those quick Ouachita storms. The ground had to be nice and clear with no overhead widowmakers either, and by that I mean dead branches or leaning trees that could crash down in a wind gust. And seeing as we were in bear country, scanning for scat, tracks, or fresh diggings were more important too, and if a place seemed active, I just moved on, because a bear encounter was not something I was willing to risk. And then once you had a spot close to water with a place for a good fire pit, it was marked on the map before being field tested, as it were. And that field testing involved one of us heading out to the proposed site and staying there overnight. On the occasion that I'm about to speak on, I was asked to check out a potential campsite around the area called He Creek. He Creek was a runoff of the Mountain Fork River and was about an 8 to 9 hour hike from where we were based. We didn't have many campsites in that area, and I agreed that we could find better ones that we already had, especially in a place with intersecting bodies of water and such varied topography. And it took me all day to get out there, and that's after hitting the trails at 7 a.m., but once I arrived, I soon found a sweet little vacation on a rise but flat peninsula which overlooked the river. It was perfect for fishing and hunting, and ideal for families with kids too, since the creek was ankle deep and the river moved nice and slow. And the only thing left to do was set up my little one-man tent, get a fire going, and see what the night brought me. I hadn't seen any bear or cougar scat, which was a big plus, but out in the wilds of southeast Oklahoma, it's not just the obvious creatures that you gotta be wary of. We've been known to get an alligator or two in the marshier regions of the southeast, and while bobcats and coyotes can be a treat to small children, rampaging herds of feral hogs pose a danger to just about anything that gets in their way, large vehicles included. And so the whole idea of staying out there overnight is to get a real feel for the place, since it's at night when the wilds really come alive. And after easily putting together a campfire, thanks to the abundance of firewood in the area, I made myself a campfire dinner and then took to reading some Call of the Wild by Headlamp. I'd read it before, but I figured that there was no better paperback for a night in the wilderness, and I'd just gotten to one of my favorite passages. Quote, "He was beaten, but he was not broken," etc., when I heard a noise about 20 to 30 yards away through the trees. I don't spook easily, and I spent enough nights outdoors to know nights can be noisy, so since all you normally need to do with an animal is let them know that you're there, all I said was, "Howdy, y'all," as I looked up from my book. Now, I didn't hear any more movement after that for a couple of minutes anyway, so I figured maybe it was just a dead branch falling from a tree. But it wasn't long before I heard it again, and that time it was even closer. Someone or something was moving through the darkness, getting closer and closer to me with each passing minute. And so I did what any other right-minded person might do in that situation, and I reached for my gun. Now, I carried a Super Red Hawk, but in a .480 Ruger, so I had a little less recoil. Now, it was very much my choice sidearm for those oh crap moments, so I was confident that I could put down whatever charged at me. My only worry was that it wasn't an animal, and whoever was out there was similarly armed as myself. So in the off chance that that was the case, I remembered saying, "You gotta be real brave or real stupid to be sneaking up on someone who's camping after dark." Now, it served as a dual purpose, making it clear to an animal that I wasn't going anywhere, and clear to a person that I wasn't some pushover. And then when I heard the sound again just beyond the light of my campfire, sounding like it was coming from behind a nearby tree, I cocked the hammer of my Red Hawk and aimed for its trunk. My hands were shaking as I tried my best to focus on getting my breathing right, so when whatever it was came around the tree trunk, I was ready for it. But then, just as I managed to get my heart rate just a little less frantic, I heard the sound of fast-moving footsteps just off to my right. Whoever it was so fast that I didn't even have time to turn and aim at him, not without giving him a clear shot at me with whatever kind of blade he was holding. I didn't get a good look at it, but I saw it shining in the firelight as he came at me, and it gave me no choice but to basically dive over my own tent in order to put something between us. I heard him yell something as he took a single swing at me, and then by the time I was up on one knee, I only saw the back of him lit up by the campfire as he ran off into the trees again, and I wasn't about to let him get away. So I aimed, steadied myself, and then took a single Hail Mary shot at him. And that bang was so loud it had my ears ringing, and I hoped to hear him scream before tumbling into the dirt, but there was nothing. Just the faint sound of heavy footsteps as whoever it was fleeing the area. I spent the rest of that night watching my own campsite from a distance, just watching and waiting for whoever attacked me to return. Packing up and heading back wasn't really an option, as it'd give whoever was out there a really good opportunity to track my movement on account of how noisy moving around at night can be. But it also raises the question of how the hell did that person manage to approach my camp so quietly, and why the heck would a person try and murder a complete stranger like that in the middle of a wilderness area? At dawn, once it was light enough to see, I walked off in the direction my attacker had run following the encounter and quickly found a trail of blood. I followed it for quite a distance, moving slowly and quietly with my pistol at the ready until I reached a small, chest-height cave set into a rock face. It went deep, but I only went in for enough to see where the blood trail ended, and there were all kinds of animal bones in there. Random pieces of camping trash too, like empty cans and plastic water bottles. But unless they were hiding at the very rear of the cave, seeing my flashlight and keeping quiet as a mouse, I don't figure anyone was in there at that time. I got back to the compound about 9 hours later in the mid-afternoon. I went straight to my boss, told him what happened, and that's why they stopped taking camping parties up near He Creek. The local sheriff said that he'd keep an ear to the ground and I was well within my right to shoot at him, but in all likelihood, they probably wouldn't find the guy with so little to go on. Now, I'm not sure if they found the blood trail and took a sample or whatever they might do. Hell, I'm not even sure they sent anyone out there at all, really. But it just goes to show you that even when you're out there in the middle of nowhere, it's not just the bears you gotta worry about. It's the men. I grew up in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, but I drifted out west in my teens, ended up getting hooked on heroin, and then spent a little time in federal prison for something I'm not too proud of. Probably goes without saying, but that was rock bottom for me. I made it through without taking any kind of beating, but when I got out, I knew I had to get myself together. For the first time in my life, I had to think about what I wanted to do with myself. I knew I liked being outside, even more so after my stretch in prison, but I knew the chances of me becoming a park or forest ranger as a felon were slim to none. I knew I could try out to be one of those wilderness firefighters because they allow felons to apply if their convictions weren't for violent crimes. But then after stopping at a bar for a couple of beers one Thursday night, I ended up talking to a guy whose cousin operated a tour company out in the Pasayten wilderness. I told him my story over those couple of beers, all the honest-to-God's truth too, no bullcrap. And when I was done, he asked if I was interested in being a tour guide. And then since it involved walking the trails all day, sometimes even camping out overnight, I only had 2 words for him: hell and yes. I got a call the next day from my future boss asking if I was okay interning for a couple of months so I could prove that I was on the level. He'd give me a place to stay, make sure I was fed, watered, and washed, but while he didn't mind taking a chance on me, he didn't want to pay for the privilege. I didn't tell him this, but at the time, I think I'd have happily worked for a whole year for free if it meant having my dream job at the end of it. So I accepted his offer, and then made my way to a small town up in the hills called Barron. I honestly had no idea what to expect, but when I arrived, I found the place was way more comfortable than I ever expected. There were 4 other guides staying up there, not including the boss who lived down in Wilthrop, and they each shared a cabin that had full amenities. There were 3 of them, so I got one all to myself for a while. I knew it was only because the other guides didn't trust me and probably because the boss had warned them that I was an ex-con, but they were nice enough, so I didn't mind having to earn their trust and respect over time. I really didn't know what to expect from the clientele either, but they proved to be a real mixed bag. You'd get your tourists and your adventure vacation types, who you're only there to make sure that they didn't get lost or wander anywhere they shouldn't. And then there were the corporate team builders or the bachelor parties who were more party than peace. And I fell into the rhythm of that place pretty quickly and started making friends pretty quickly too once people saw how serious I was about it. And then once my trial period was up and I was a fully trained and fully paid up member of the guiding team, I was able to head out with parties all on my own and sometimes for a night or 2 of camping. And that's how I ended up meeting a family of 4 headed up by an older lady named Patty. Patty and her husband must have been in their 60s, maybe early 70s, and they had their 2 grown-up kids with them. They decided to spend a little time in the great outdoors together on account of raising their 2 grown-up kids on concrete, and right away, I could tell that they were going to be great guests. They were just about as wholesome a family unit as it was possible to get, at least in my opinion anyway. They clearly loved each other very much, but they were real funny too, and the way they went at it with each other had me laughing along with them. They were interesting folks too and had some amazing stories to share, so it was one of those parties that was such a pleasure to guide that if I was a millionaire, I would have happily guided them for free. And so we hiked all day, stopped for breaks here and there, until we reached our campsite for the night. I got us a fire going with the help of Patty's grown-up son. Then she insisted on doing all the campfire cooking so I could relax and take a load off. We had 2 tents with us, one for the parents, one for the kids, and a reminder that they are grown-up people. And then my small one-man pup tent. We got them all set up, went over a few emergency procedures in case anything happened in the night, and then each went to our sleeping bags for the evening. But what I didn't know, what I could never have known, was just how wrong things were going to go for us during the next day's hike. I remember waking up to the sound of voices and being blinded by flashlights when I looked out of my tent. There, standing outside their tents in what amounted to their nighttime wear, were Patty's husband, son, and daughter, but there was no Patty anywhere to be seen. The 3 of them were whispering at first, but when they heard me asking what was going on, they told me that Patty was missing. Her husband said that he woke up to noises beside him in the tent, but figured his wife was just rolling over in her sleep or something. And then when he asked if she was okay and he didn't hear any reply, he realized that not only was the tent's front flap unzipped, but his wife was nowhere to be seen. Patty's husband then takes a walk around outside for her just to make sure that she really is off taking a leak somewhere. And then when a couple of minutes went by and she hadn't returned, he woke up his kids. And that's when they realized that Patty hadn't even put her shoes on. We briefly discussed the procedure for someone going missing, and so after a quick reminder, we each walked off in a different compass direction with our flashlights and then started yelling out Patty's name. We kept each other's flashlights in view and we didn't go too far, but we kept on yelling her name as loud as we could. And when we didn't get any response, we kept on pushing outwards a little more until we were maybe 100 meters apart on all sides. We yelled and kept on yelling, but still didn't hear a thing from Patty in response. And since I didn't want anyone wandering off and getting lost, I called out for everyone to return to camp. I planned on contacting the local rangers and enlisting their help while I got the family back to headquarters, but Patty's son didn't like that idea at all. A small argument broke out between myself and the son, who insisted that we stay and keep on looking. Now, she was an older lady, so she couldn't have gotten far, I think, and while I agreed, we had certain protocols to follow in the event of someone going missing like that, and those protocols were based on keeping everyone else in a group safe. Yet Patty's husband agreed with their son and insisted that they stay at the camp and keep calling out her name in case she got lost, and so she could find her way back to the camp. I had to work with them. I had to at least give them some hope in that respect. And honestly, because that's the exact same thing I hoped someone might do for me if that was my mom out there lost in the dark forest. And so, while I started to pack up our stuff, I told Patty's son that I wouldn't stop him if he wanted to take one last look around the perimeter.